Folks, Michael Mann Security Services. Welcome to the Guarding Series. We are going to start off with use of force guidelines for security officers. So welcome. If you want to contact us, you can get a hold of us at contact@michaelmannsecurityservices.com, or you can always call us at 615-956-3912. You can also get us at Scott, SCOTT, at michaelmannsecurityservices.com. All right, we're going to get right into it. The agenda today, we're going to talk about considerations. We're going to talk about use of force, penalties very specifically, use of force guidelines, arrest and detainment, and review at the end of this. So you've got some just things to review very quickly. Okay, let's get into use of force for considerations. Seizures. So what we're going to talk about here very specifically are seizures, and that gets into use of force and arrests made by private citizens or security officers, which is what we are. All right. Now let's get in just real quick. Training and licensing. I know for a fact that the required training for use of force for security officers is not sufficient. We're in the state of Tennessee. We train probably 500 to 1,000 security officers a year. We try to go above the state guidelines as much as we can, depending on the client or depending on the class. But we understand completely that the required training for most licensing throughout the country is just not sufficient. Not your fault, not anybody's fault on this call. It's just what it is. That's why we're providing this very quick training for you guys in the series. All right. Just understand also that as a private citizen, right, as a security officer, that's what you're acting as. So when you're out there doing your job as a licensed security officer, even with all the equipment and your training and your license, you are a private citizen when it comes to use of force and detainments or arrest. Now there are some exceptions, like the state of South Carolina. I'm sorry. I ran nuclear facilities in numerous states for several years, and had to license and had to manage and oversee private security personnel that protected these commercial nuclear facilities. And in one state, very specifically South Carolina, there, if you're a licensed security officer and you're protecting property, while you're on that property, you have the same arrest authority as a deputy sheriff. But that is one of the exceptions. Like here in the state of Tennessee where we are, that is not the case. Now, some of the stuff I'm going to talk about here shortly, we're going to just kind of talk in generalization. But I will very specifically address the state of Tennessee because, again, that's where we're reporting from, that's where we are, and that's where a lot of our audience is from, okay? So, again, we're going to go over use of force and arrests, and then just remember, you guys are acting as private citizens, and we're doing this video again, or this series of videos, because we know that the required training for you folks is just insufficient. It's inadequate, okay? All right, so let's talk about use of force or penalty. So when we talk about use of force, even for us as private citizens, is any physical effort used to control, restrain, or overcome the resistance of another. So like a resistant or combative subject. So we have to, for whatever reason, engage with someone, whether that's during an arrest or some other incident where we have to control them, right? They've tried to assault us, assault someone else. Now, under the Fourth Amendment, right, the use of force and arrest are considered seizures. Now, most of the time when we talk about that, we're talking about police officers or government agents. There are some rules that they have to follow. Now, even though as a private security officer, we're not a government agent, there can be some criminal and civil penalties at the state level anytime we use any force that is unnecessary or unreasonable. Okay, so even though we're not, don't necessarily fall under the Fourth Amendment because we're not government agents. And again, there are some exceptions with that. We're not going to talk about that on this in this module of training. But again, if we detain someone unnecessarily or we use an unnecessary amount or unreasonable force, there are some civil and criminal penalties at the state level that we can suffer. So we must be careful. This is a video very quickly to show that. This security officer, we won't talk about the state it's in, but they're doing some traffic enforcement on private property somewhere, and somebody tries to drive around some cones and they end up damaging the cones. One of the security officers ends up pulling a weapon on the person, draws his handgun, and the supervisor shows up. And not only is this considered use of force, in fact, in the state of Tennessee, this would be aggravated assault. but the supervisor also comes up and they kind of detain this person unnecessarily, right? So so all of this is unreasonable, and there were some civil penalties, or there was a civil lawsuit launched. So I'll let you watch the video here, okay?
A gun on a driver for running over a traffic cone. That confrontation happened outside Valley Fair Mall in San Jose.
KPIX5's Betty Yu is there tonight.
The driver's attorney says his client tried to reason with his security guard and tell him to drop the gun, but it didn't work. He called the behavior of both guards who threatened his client outrageous and says the iPhone video proves it. For several minutes, the driver of this car stared at the barrel of a security guard's gun in terror, all because he accidentally ran over a traffic cone, according to his attorney. The attorney says it wasn't long before the guard's supervisor showed up to intimidate his client.
Sure.
Put it in park.
Yeah, it's in park.
Come on out.
You can talk to me here. I'm not, dude, he pulled a gun on me.
That's all right. Unlock your door for me.
I'm not going to do
I'm
that.
right here for you.
I can talk to you right now.
There's not even a gun in his hand now.
But I can.
Unlock your door, please.
Why can't you talk to me right now?
Sir, you can unlock your door, or I'm going to take out your window.
So why are you going to take out my window?
The lawsuit says that the drama started when the 27-year-old driver and Apple employee, Nicholas Buchanan, stopped in a line of cars trying to leave a Valley Fair garage. The driver in front of him put his car in reverse. So to give him space, he moved into another lane and drove over a cone. The lawsuit claims that the first guard was aggressive and out of control. He came running after him after he exited and unexpectedly drew his gun from the holster, pulled the gun on Buchanan, and aimed the gun at Buchanan with his finger on the trigger.
I can talk to you here. Why are you going to take out my window?
Next came his belligerent supervisor. Court documents say that San Jose police eventually showed up and determined the guard didn't have a permit to carry the gun, and he also didn't have a security guard license. The events took place in December of last year, and the lawsuit was filed last week. The driver is suing the mall, the security company, and the two guards for assault, false imprisonment, negligence, and emotional distress. In San Jose, Betty Yu, KPIX5.
All right. So again, civil and criminal penalties when we use any kind of force or we detain at any time when it is unnecessary or it is considered unreasonable. So let's talk about use of force guidelines very quickly. In general, again, we're talking about the state of Tennessee, but all over the states or in the country here, they're primarily the same. But here, we talk about two categories of force, and that is deadly and non-deadly. So if you didn't learn that in your use of force training, you should take note of this. So deadly force, any force likely to or intended to cause death or serious bodily harm or bodily injury. Non-deadly force, of course, any force that we're going to use that is not likely to or intended to cause death or serious bodily injury. Now, the majority of states in the country allow private citizens to protect themselves and others from harm, and that includes us as security officers. So, we are able to protect ourselves and protect innocent persons from any kind of harm if we are to see that or we have cause to believe that that is going to happen. Here in the state of Tennessee, when we talk about this, especially when we talk about like the use of deadly force, we're talking about TCA or Tennessee Code Annotated 3911-611, which is self-defense, and then again TCA 3911-612, which is defense of an innocent third party or innocent person. So as private security officers, we do have the right to protect ourselves or someone else from harm, and we're talking about self-defense. All right. Any force we use must be reasonable, and by definition, reasonable force means the minimal amount of force necessary to overcome an opposing force. Now, understand, reasonable force doesn't have to be equal. It doesn't have to be 50-50. All right. There are escalating factors that can be present in any use of force incident, and so that doesn't mean that it has to be 50-50. It just has to be reasonable, and as a private security officer, I am going to have to articulate that. Understand, if you make an arrest or you get into a situation where you have to use force, the police are going to show up because you should arrest that person and you should prosecute especially if you're going to use force. And of course, if you detain them, then of course they need to be arrested. You need to charge them with something. When the police show up, they're going to ask questions. And as a private citizen, you and the suspect both, the police officer is really investigating a crime because now someone's been detained or someone's been injured. And so you need to be able to articulate what you did and why you did it. To the right here, you see a use of force continuum. A use of force continuum just simply is a guideline that we can use as a standard that tells us how much force we use in any given situation. And you can see that starts all the way with our presence as a security officer, all the way up to the use of deadly force. And there's some things in between here, all that require training, like verbal commands. We could do things like de-escalation, soft techniques or soft empty hand control, hard techniques, and that could get into everything from strikes to the use of impact weapons, etc. If you've never heard of what a use of force continuum, and you are a contractor or you're working, through a proprietary security organization, you probably need to go to your employer's use of force policy, or go to your supervisor and ask about the use of force continuum or what that policy is if you've not seen it. All right, to keep yourselves out of trouble. Okay. This is a situation where force was unreasonable. If you've watched some of our other videos, you've seen this. This is a private security officer on private property. Again, I think this is the state of California. He is protecting a synagogue. Someone comes up to videotape the synagogue. The security officer believes the person is trespassing. So for whatever reason, he draws his pistol. And I think what happened here is he has a negligent discharge. Unfortunately, that projectile skip fires off the pavement and hits the person that the guard believed was trespassing in the foot. Okay. And so this is an example of where the force used was unreasonable. And there was a lawsuit that was filed, and there was also some criminal charges filed against the guard at a later time. So let's just see this video real quick. Again, this is an example of unreasonable force, and it's an unreasonable seizure, obviously.
Shot me. This was the startling moment a YouTuber whose channel name is Furry Potato was shot in the leg.
Ah, shot me.
The whole thing was streamed live on the account. Police say the content curator, who goes by Zoe Perez, was outside a Los Angeles synagogue standing on a public sidewalk when she was shot by a security guard.
During the incident, we did try to keep the girls calm, and the building was placed on lockdown.
The school's principal says there was concern over what Zoe was filming.
An individual was filming our girls at the school and the building, the perimeter of the building extensively, including all the windows and the exits. And this caused a great deal of anxiety to both our staff and our students.
I'm just taking shots of the thing. He comes up super aggressive. I'm not looking to talk to that guy at that point.
Some say the school's response was uncalled for.
Listen, nobody should freak out when someone's recording from a public sidewalk. And that's all she was doing.
Perez is a First Amendment auditor, according to the YouTube channel description. The account, with more than 17,000 subscribers, shows video of Perez going to public places and testing First Amendment rights.
Again, I don't understand how I could interfere with business when I was in the lobby for 25 seconds, but it is what it is.
Perez, who here is commenting on previous unrelated charges, isn't facing charges in this case. The security guard was charged with assault using a deadly weapon. This is Inside It.
All right, so criminal penalties there. All right. So again, the force we use must be reasonable, and you must be able to articulate that level of force used. All right. So quickly, let's get into arrest and detainment for private security officers. Again, we're going to focus on the state of Tennessee, but there's general information here that applies to any state. So if you're in a state outside of Tennessee, a lot of this is going to apply to you. So let's talk about what a seizure is. So the seizure, or a seizure, is to deprive a person of their freedom of movement. Now, this can be both physical and psychological. So I can physically restrain someone, or if I'm there detaining a person and I'm talking to them, and at some point they psychologically believe they can't leave because you're there holding them, then that is also a seizure. Okay. Now, when we talk about police versus private citizens, now police officers, talking about government agents, they have the right to detain someone. A case that was developed many years ago out of the state of Ohio. We call that case Terry versus Ohio, because the defendant, or the person that brought this up to the Supreme Court, or the suspect's last name was Terry. And so in that case, many years ago, a police officer saw what he believed to be criminal activity or surveillance of a store that was about to be robbed. He went up to the subjects, he detained them, ended up patting one of the subjects down, found a weapon, arrested all of them. They took this all the way to the Supreme Court, said it was unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court came back and said, no, a police officer, based on their training experience and their privileges, have the right, if they have reasonable suspicion, to detain someone or go through what we call or conduct a Terry stop based on that reasonable suspicion. Okay, so they have the right to detain someone to ensure that a crime has not been committed. As a private citizen, we cannot detain. Let me say that one more time. There is no such thing as reasonable suspicion for us to detain, very specifically here in the state of Tennessee. Okay, and I know that there's some folks, or I'm assuming there's some folks that are going to be watching this video that they've received some guard training somewhere, and that a trainer probably told them that they can detain somebody for 20 minutes or whatever. You cannot do that in the state of Tennessee, and you can't do that in most states as a private citizen. In the state of Tennessee, and there's a 2015, I think 2014 or 2015 opinion from the State Attorney General's office that says very specifically the only way that we can detain someone as a private citizen is either through consent or arrest, like we're going to arrest them. We have to be careful about consent. Go back up to physical or psychological. Okay, like we can't stop somebody if we think somebody's trespassing on property. We can't go up and ask for their ID and go through a field interview. We can't do that as private citizens. If they can sit and they want to sit there and they want to talk to us, we can do that, but we have to be very careful with consent. They can leave and think, well, hey, you know what? What he did was unreasonable. What that officer did was unreasonable. I psychologically think that they were holding me there and I was, being held against my will. They can call the police. They can have a report done and then go get a warrant of potentially for false imprisonment in the state of Tennessee. So we have to be careful about the consent piece. And the only other way we can detain someone is if we arrest them. And the only time we can arrest someone as a private citizen in the state of Tennessee is if a misdemeanor has been committed in our presence, or we have reasonable cause to believe a felony has been committed, or of course, if a felony is committed in our presence. So this idea that as a private citizen or a security officer, we can go up and we can detain somebody for 20 minutes and let them go, that is not true. Okay. So you need to be very careful when you go up to speak to someone and you want to detain them. We really, this gets into the rules of arrest. And again, the rules of arrest, misdemeanor committed in our presence and a felony also, or a reasonable cause to believe that a felony has been committed. Okay. You can look that opinion up on the state of Tennessee. Just type in, Tennessee guards ability to detain, and that opinion will come up. You'll see it. It came out in 2014 or 2015. If you've received any training that conflicts with that, then it is incorrect. Okay. And again, we're not here to shame anybody. I'm just trying to keep you guys out of trouble and tell you what the law says. Okay. All right. Real quick considerations. Again, you need to review your state's laws regarding the powers of arrest and use of force for private citizens, because as a security officer, that's what you are acting as. Use of force must be reasonable, okay, which means that is the minimal amount of force to overcome that opposing force. Doesn't mean it has to be 50-50 or even. It just has to be reasonable. We have to be able to articulate it. If you don't know what the use of force continuum is, you've not been trained on, never seen that, you're working for a private security company or proprietary security organization now, I would go to my supervisor or manager and I ask to see the use of force policy and that use of force continuum to ensure that you're following the rules. And then, of course, with detainment can only happen on consent and arrest. We must be very, very careful when we start talking about consent. Like we go back up to the video where we saw where the guard drew the gun on the person in the vehicle, then the supervisor comes out, holds them there. You can see in the lawsuit, go back and review that video where it says false imprisonment. Yeah, he was being held there, not only gunpoint, but by the supervisor there, as the supervisor was wanting to see ID and all this other stuff. That was unreasonable. That was an unreasonable detainment. He was actually under arrest. I don't know what the outcome of that lawsuit and the criminal charges were, but again, they were brought about. So just remember, at the state level, there can be both civil and criminal penalties. All right, folks, you have any questions, you can, again, send them to us at contact@Michael Mann Security Services, or you can email them at Scott, SCOTT, at michaelmannsecurityservices.com there. And then, of course, you can also get us on our Facebook page, or you can just go to the website and send us a message. And we will see you next week as we continue the series or the Guardian series, and we continue to go through things like active shooter response, executive protection, equipment reviews, etc. Be careful out there. And again, contact us if you have any questions, and I hope to see everybody next week.
Hey folks, Michael Mann from Michael Mann Security Services. Thank you so much for watching our content. Hey, if you want to get a hold of us, you've got questions, here's how you can do that. You can give me a call at 615-956-3912. You can always get us at Safe with Man, and we're going to answer that as quick as possible. Okay? Or, folks, we have a free YouTube channel. There's a library of videos on physical protection, providing emergency response, security assessments, you name it. We've got a year's worth of video and training on our YouTube channel, and it is absolutely free. And that's at Safe with Man. You can get us at michaelmannsecurityservices.com. That's the website address. Shoot us a message. You can also get us at contact@michaelmannsecurityservices.com, or you can get us at scott@michaelmannsecurityservices.com, and we will email you back as quick as possible. And remember, it is about prevention, not response.